Is always a difficult thing for any endeavor. And this message is intended for people who are thinking about trying to be different. And the overall theme would be morality. And that's a theme that most people associate with lots of different things. From religious to then scientific aspects of it. When I speak of morality, it's simply, what is the right thing to do? What is good? How ought we act? And in many ways, these are the most boring topics, the most played out topics, the most controversial topics. They are all of those at the same time. And, do people really care? Is the question I have. I see passionate people talking about their beliefs and what they think is right and what they ought to do, and they have conviction with these things, and there's no doubt they have conviction, but conviction, in itself, what does it mean? I mean, I think it influences people when we see other people with conviction. We may want to follow them or believe them, but it certainly doesn't play into whether it's right or not. And often, people with the most conviction can be the most lost, even, because they're so convinced that they see the right way and what they have to do. So this message, again, is for people who aren't totally closed off to seeing a different way of things, or just wanting to think about it, thinking about how they will be, or how they can be, because as I found, as we age, for some reason or another, we close off. It happens to everyone. We become rigid, we become solid, we become inflexible. This happens not only in our joints, in our knees, in our back, and our, pretty much every joint of the body. It happens in our beliefs and our actions and our likes and our dislikes. As we age, most of us become rigid. We become hard. Is that necessary? Is that how things have to be? I think there's certainly an important aspect of that. We can't always be in a state of flux and in a state of perfect flexibility and uncertainty. At some point we have to settle in on fixed ways to get things done. That's necessary. We have to be that way. But can the process go too far? Can it get to a point where we're caught in our ways and we can't see out of them, and we become lost when we don't even know we're lost. We become convinced of right when we haven't even analyzed what's right. We went through some process at some point. We weighed different ways of being. We've tried different things and settled on one way. And at some point we feel we have found the right and we know what it is. And, I felt this process going on in me for years. I'm in my 40s, and I remember it going on in my 20s very clearly. I remember asking a colleague of mine and saying, why does this happen to people? Does it have to be this way? I felt it happening. I still feel it happening now. It's taking over me. I, on some level, see it as a disease, a pathology, that this stiffness in thought and the body kind of overtakes us all, and we become stuck and convinced. And this has been called many words in the past. I like the word dogma right now, when we become dogmatic about what we believe or don't believe, and it's when we're just convinced. And I've come to see it as a state of delusion. When you're that convinced of things, delusion, carries a lot of baggage. We talk about people with seeing alien, believing that not seeing anything, believing in things that aren't happening, that are clearly aliens implanted sensors in the brain and are recording our thoughts, and we see this as a psychiatric pathology, but I see delusion all around. It's when we're utterly convinced things are one way and can't see them in a different way. When we can question it on one level. Some people say, well, I can see it the other way, but I really believe this. When they just don't really question it, that's all lip service. It's a superficial cover, a politeness that we engage in, but we of course know or believe this one thing with all certainty, complete certainty, and won't question it. And I've been talking in abstracts up until this point. You may not even know what I'm speaking of. Right now on my mind, dogmatic positions and political parties are very common. People convinced with 100% they know what's right, and they believe these things convincingly to themselves. Won't question it. It goes for both sides. The so-called liberal Democrats to the conservative Republicans they believe in their positions of absolute right, that they know the way that it has to be, and they fight for it as they must, and are convinced, and no argument's going to persuade either side. It's impossible. Arguments play no effect at this point. It's once you're invaded by dogma, you are taken over in this way, and you won't see the other side or question it. It's just how we're built. It's part of being human, I guess, to some extent. I guess we can also oppose it, but I think that's difficult in an uncomfortable place. So, again, the topic here is some morality, and somehow morality plays into what I'm talking about, and I guess I'm trying to say that morality has to do with being open, to some extent opposing dogma, to not let it completely overtake us in our decision making and how we treat people in our positions. But this message is not anywhere, and for the main reason that it's the dogmatic positions that are the ones that get broadcast, that get spread to other people, that get taken up, because they're so convincing, because they're so simple, because they're simplified, because they're easy to digest for the majority of people. Sound bites or simplistic expressions or whatever. They come into us, we accept them, they fit with something. These, they fit somewhere. There's some grain of truth in them, but they're not as much truth as we might think they are. And they invade us all. And so the messages that don't have this, you do not see anywhere. I don't see them anywhere. They're not in the media, in any media. Some media are better than others, but I don't see it very much anywhere. It is not in blogs or Facebook. There are books. There are plenty of books that have the remains of thoughts that aren't overtaken by this dogma. They exist. They're all around us. Often they're longer books or hard to find, or we may not even know about them, or they're not popular because they don't fit into some sort of preconceived place of dogma, and we don't know about them. But they're not on TV. They're not in the news. And I think that's important, because we're to some extent shaped by these media outlets. Not some extent, I mean very much shaped by them, without a doubt. I have to constantly challenge the assertions, the things I hear on TV and news and positions, and question, and I find myself believing them just innately without thought, and I have to be very careful not to fall into them. And what does that mean? It means anything you hear, it's just been sort of filtered, interpreted, picked and choosed, and sorted out before it gets to your ears. And that goes for the bigger the media source. What do I mean by bigger? The more power they have, the more vested interest in keeping things a certain way, the more likely it is going to be a dogmatic message, that it isn't a message of any kind of, it's not an open opinion. It's a fixed and rigid thing that is meant to solidify your position in you. It's meant to harden you up in some way, to keep you stuck in who you are and how you see things. And is that a problem? I mean, that's how it is. I'm not saying it's evil. Is that part of the problem of where we're at? Of why we're not able to get out of these, these arguments back and forth, these chronic conflicts on one side or the other that seem to go on and on and on, and nobody listens to anybody else. They don't listen. They just talk. And what's the point of talking when there's little listening? And this isn't to say it's like this everywhere. And there are places we can find them where there's discussion, where there's what I'm calling openness to other ways, lack of rigidity. It exists. It's harder to find, and we don't have time for it. It's usually not as exciting. It's not as, it doesn't just, because it doesn't fit in with where you're at. It doesn't fit in with what you already believe, so it's strange, you'll call it weird, crazy or words, or boring. I don't know what it'll just have all these words, anxiety provoking, whatever it is. It doesn't grab you quickly. It's not addictive, and therefore it doesn't stick. It gets lost, and it gets lost in the noise. And this is mostly noise. Most things are noise. So we don't have time to listen anymore. We're busy. We have to live, we have to survive, we have to work, we have to care for our families and our others. And there's a lot of stress, there's a lot of fear. The world's not all bad, I'm not saying that by any means. There's a lot of good and hopefulness and love. Really awesome things in this world. But I'm not sure of the balance at this point. Again, get back to the point of how to know what to do, how to know what's right, how to make choices. And I think we're not making choices anymore. Or, of course we are to some extent. But we're acting, we're reacting, we're being drawn in places, we're being seduced into things, we're being coerced into things, we're being fed very particular things, and food, quite legit, quite real. And so this idea that we have all this choice is to a large part, so there's choice, right? There's lots of things you can ask for, you can get, you can get different clothes and all different colors, and your iPhone case can be whatever way you like it. And we call this choice, but it's not, I don't see it as choice. They're just a fixed set of options that are placed before you, and you happen to find one of those more agreeable than the others. You're drawn to one of them, and there's, just great. Those options are there, and but is it true choice? Is it freedom in a way? Is it? I mean, it's hard to express this part right now about choice, so I may put that down. Save that for another time when I can better explain what I mean. And I would like people just to be able to in a really way be who they are, to be who they to bring out the things in people of what they can be and what they are. And I'm getting at a cliched expression in that, and I think it's possible, and we can do it. But the choices that we're given right now, in this sense, they're just false choices. They're distractions. They're ways of funneling us into very particular ways that all end up in the same place. So it's like you're in a maze, and there's 100 different choices of which path to take, and you'll take the path that you want to take, and you go in that maze, and you think, I know the right way, and you go down that maze, and somebody made that maze in advance, and really all the paths lead pretty much to the same place. They're not leading to some sense of new growth and fulfillment in a real way. They're just leading to very temporary, transient, fulfillment. Just like eating a candy or a burger. Yeah, it fills your stomach up briefly, and then it's gone, and then you're hungry again. So that's where almost all the choices in our lives are right now. We take them, they fill us up really briefly, and then it's gone, and we're left empty again. Because it was never a choice that came out of us that helped us grow and become different. It was simply just some preset maze placed before us to funnel us into some direction, to some place where that place sets us up to be hungry again. I mean, that's how it's set up. The choices are all set up to facilitate your ongoing hunger, your ongoing lack of fulfillment, your ongoing emptiness. And you will never feel full in this race. It's just ongoing emptiness. And you believe you'll find fulfillment in one of these things, in one of these paths that have been laid before you by others outside of us, and be it parents, be it companies, politicians, teachers, books, gurus, psychiatrists, psychologists, priests, and, whoever, they're laid before us. And that isn't to say to ignore all these, all the teachings of people who have come before us, or all the other things out there that are for us. We don't ignore it. I'm not saying to do that. I'm saying that they're not answers, is what I'm saying. They're not offering you answers, and they're not offering you fulfillment or wholeness, whatever you want to call it. You can call it whatever you want. You can call it happiness. You can call it peace. You can call it love. Not whatever term works best for you. I see it all as part of the same thing. And so have a second to think about that. So again, what's wrong or right? And one thing I'm not saying is that there's no wrong or right, or that it's relative in some way, or that we can't know it. I don't believe any of those things at all. But I'm offering something that's a little more, different. I mean, I don't think the answers are in any preset religion. I think they can help. I think they can offer guidance. I don't think they're all evil. I think there's a lot of great resources out there for people to find and be open to and to learn about. And that's the point, to be open and to learn about and to see it for what it is. And I think a lot of people don't trust themselves to make these real choices about what they need for who they are. I mean, the real choice about what you need, it's what do you need, what is in you, that what is right there. I don't want to say what is right for you, because that sounds like I'm just being relative. Do whatever you want that's right for you, and it's what is right for you is also right for the universe, in a way, is what I'm saying. They're the same thing. They're not different. There's no selfishness, and selfishness isn't wrong. Not that word is often used inappropriately. Everybody should be selfish in a way to where their concern for their goodness is one of the top priorities. I mean, concern for your own good is concern for the good of everyone. And sometimes that requires doing for others. I mean, it's not simple. None of this stuff is simple. There's just no algorithm for it. There's no rule book. There's no answer to be found in any straightforward way. I mean, and that's it. There are straightforward ways to get at things. I find myself obviously taking back things I say, because it's so hard to say things that don't trap yourself in this, what I'm calling this dogmatic place where you're overcome and rigid. And I'm rigid as anyone. I'm quite rigid. And it's not all bad either. So I guess that's all. Thanks.